Welcome knitters. In this week's short little technique video, I want to show you the provisional cast on. So there's two ways you can go about this. One is to just knit a crochet chain and then pick up stitches through the hump of the back of the chain, and I'll show you what I mean by that. The other way is to crochet your chain onto the needle, onto your working knitting needle. So I'll show you that as well, and the potential differences between the two. Ideally, they should produce the identical effect, but it does depend on what end you start with. So if you're interested in a discrepancy that I found earlier on in another knit along that we did, I'll put the link down below for that video. It was when we did the harvest cardigan, and it had to do with which end your working yarn ended up with. And it was a garter stitch situation on a collar, and we ended up with an extra knitted row that created kind of a valley. And anyhow, you can check that out in the description if you want to, and if not, skip that and just follow along with me from here. All right, let's get started. All right, to begin with, for a provisional cast on, we're just going to need to make a little single crochet chain so that we'll have a way to unzip our knitting, so to speak, when we're done. So I'm using a crochet hook that is roughly the same size as my needles. This is a 4.25 millimeter. You know, you can use one that's a little bigger if you'd like, that's fine. I'm just doing a loose single chain here. I'm assuming you know how to do that. I am not a crocheter. But anyway, so I'm just gonna, whoops. I'm just going to do a few. You want to do a little bit longer chain than you need cast on stitches. So just for the purposes of showing you here, then I'm going to go ahead and draw this last one through. Now, what you want to do when you draw this through, I've used this yarn before, but when you draw this through, you want to make sure that you know which is the end that you ended with, the yarn tail that you ended with, because this is the one you're going to pick off. Now, you don't have to draw this all the way through. You could leave a loop if you wanted to make it easier, or after you draw it through, just simply tie an overhand knot on this end so that you can recall, see, I've already done that, so you know which end that you need to unzip, which end you need to begin with when it comes time to remove this chain. So this is the slip knot end that I started with, and I can tell that here, there's the slip knot, and then this is the chain end that I ended with, because there's my little overhand knot that I'm just using like a bookmark, if you will. So I know this is the end that I'm going to unzip with. Okay, going back to the end I started with, I'm going to take notice of which is the flat side of this crochet chain and which is the bumpy side. So when you look at this, you can tell that the flat side, where this tail end where I finished, that comes out of, this is very flat. All of these chains are very flat. And the other side, you can see these little bumps. It's like the bumps on the back of a dinosaur. So what I'm going to want to do is knit into those. So I'm just going to put my knitting needle right into one of those spine bumps and get my working yarn, and I'm going to wrap that counterclockwise just as if I'm knitting, like a regular yarn over. And I'm just going to pull that right through. Now you can use a crochet hook here if you want to poke a crochet hook into one of those spine bumps and then draw the loop through and then put it on your needle. You could certainly do that. Just make sure that you're not twisting your chain, and you don't want to accidentally be picking up one of these chain legs. You want to make sure you get into the dinosaur spine, get into the bump on the back right there. Okay. So you're just going to go in and do that as many times as you need to for your cast on. So that makes a handy chain edge that you can unzip when the time comes, so you can begin knitting the other way, or you can pick it up and do a bind off that matches the bind off that you're finishing with. There's any number of reasons why you'd want to have a provisional cast on. There we go. Again, just make sure that you double check you have your flat side and then your dinosaur bump. So knit right into the bump. Okay, now when you're finished, I'll show you what this is going to look like when you unzip it. Let me just knit a couple of rows of garter stitch and then I'll show you. Okay, I've just knitted this tiny little rectangle here just to be able to show you what's going to happen when I unzip this. So I just knitted a few rows of garter stitch and then bound off. And I left a big loop here because I'm just going to take this back out after I'm done showing you. So I didn't want to actually pull it through and, weave in the tails and all that. But you can see here, this is the end that has the little knot in it. That's where I ended. So what I want to do to unzip my provisional cast on is find the dinosaur bump again, draw the tail through. I'm going to draw the tail through, and then I'm going to unzip the chain. When I get up to the first stitch here that I'm unzipping, you can see what's going to happen. Okay, this is wound around some because that's where I went up the next row, and somehow I accidentally caught that. But no matter, just undo this, and then you can, all right, you can see where I'm about to pick that up, and then you can see this next loop that's going to unzip in a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that very carefully, and it's going to release the next stitch that I need to pick up with my needle. See there? Pull that, pick up. Yeah. Okay, this is Peanut. He's not helping. Kitty tail, right in the way. Pull that, pick that up. Now you want to make sure these are oriented correctly if you can on your needle. You can go back and fix that later if you need to. Yeah, just do what you need to do there, but just make sure you get them up on the needle without losing them. So then you have live stitches again to start knitting the other direction. All right, so I hope you found that helpful. Here I'm going to show you a second way to do a provisional cast on in just a moment. Let me finish picking these up and we'll take a look at it here. You could unzip the whole thing. I just kind of like to do it one at a time, but there you go. See, now we have all our stitches back on, and if they are oriented, if they're not seated properly with the right leg forward, then that's easy enough to correct. Just go back in and turn them. You can see how I'm just changing. I'm just going in and changing the way that they're seated because I know that they're backwards. At least a couple of them are correct, but most of them are backwards the way that I picked them up, but that's all right. Okay, and now we're ready to knit the other direction. Okay, an alternative way is a crochet cast on, which creates this similar effect, but it's crocheted. So that way, if you're not a fan of picking up the dinosaur bumps on the back of your chain, you don't need to do that. So you just start with a slip knot, same as before, and you want to have your knitting needle and your crochet needle be the same size. Have your waste yarn go to the back and your hook toward the front of you, and then all you want to do is hang on to everything here. Hang on to your tail with your left hand. The waste yarn is to the back, go around the front, grab a hold of that, and then into your first slip knot. Now then take your waste yarn to the back, go around the front, grab that just like you normally would to make a crochet chain, and pull that through your loop. Around the back, crochet hook in the front, grab a hold of it, and pull it through the loop. So what we're doing here is basically putting our needle on the dinosaur bumps, or through all the dinosaur bumps, at the same time that we're creating our chain. So this is a little faster. It does eliminate this step. It eliminates the guesswork of trying to figure out which is the dinosaur bump and which is the flat side of your chain, like we talked about earlier. So that's advantageous in that it just, you're just going ahead and putting it on your knitting needle to start with. All right, so that should be enough. And then you can just pull this and leave a big loop right there if you want to, so that this is the same end that you're going to begin to unzip with. That works too. Okay, same as before, you're going to go and get your working yarn. Here's the difference. Rather than beginning to knit into the bumps on the side where we made the slip knot, we're knitting into the bumps on the side where we're unzipping. So that may or may not make a difference in your pattern. It depends on whether you're doing a stockinette stitch to start with or doing garter stitch rows to begin with. I have a video that I'll put a link to in the upper right hand corner of this video about a discrepancy that occurred in between these two methods in a cardigan pattern that we did a year or so ago, and you can check that out if you're interested to see the discrepancy and when you might wish to use one or the other of these methods. But now you can tell I'm just knitting right into this, going right along here. So now I'm just going to knit a couple rows and we'll compare. All right, here I am back with my little knitted rectangle, and I'm about to unzip my provisional cast on here. This is the loop that I left, or I could have pulled this all the way through. But anyway, this is my reminder, little overhand reminder knot that this is the end I want to unzip with. So I'm just going to start unzipping that or pulling that out. And I'm going to turn it this way so I can see which loops I want to pick up with my knitting needle here. So I'm going to go in, I'll try to go in properly and orient them correctly on the stitch or on the working needle as I go. But no matter, just get a hold of them however you can for now. But you can plainly see that that one's going to be popping off right there. Okay. And that one almost disappeared in there, but I got a hold of it. I will need to fix the stitch mount of that one in a minute. Okay, but these are coming off pretty well, you can see, and you can just go ahead and unzip the whole thing and then pick them up, but I prefer to do it one at a time as I go. Because especially with the contrasting waist yarn, you can plainly see where they are and which ones need to be picked up pretty easily there. See that? There we go. Wait for my camera to focus. All right, so now I'm at the end. And that's just where I brought my yarn around to begin. Okay. All right, and let's compare. So these are the ones I just picked up. This is the other one I did, and they look pretty much identical to me. So I would say, depending on your pattern and whether you begin with a purl or a knit or a garter row. All right, the one I just picked up, that would be a knit row. You can see there's the purl bumps are one row down. I don't know if you can tell that. Let me wait for my camera to focus here. There we go. And I think the two methods are pretty identical. Here's the tail I began with. Here's the tail I began with. And these are just, you know, where I'm ending, my ending bind off. So I would say use whatever method works best for you. Either the picking up the dinosaur bumps on the back end of your crochet chain, or using the crochet cast on. I hope you found that helpful. If you'd like to support the channel and help keep these videos coming to you each and every week, check out what I'm offering over on Patreon at www.patreon.com/purl together. I'd love you have you join my patron community over there as well. All right, happy knitting and thanks for watching.